Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Less is More podcast. This is the very first episode and I am very excited to release it. Real quick, I just wanted to say a couple of things. In this episode, we talked about a lot of things. We covered a wide variety of topics, and I forgot to have him plug all of his websites to all the videos that we talked about, so I'm going to make sure I put that in the description everywhere that I post this, so be sure to check that out. And also, I couldn't have asked for a better guest to have on the very first episode. I knew that there was going to be a chance for us to really explore a lot of topics, and that's exactly what we did. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out, and not to always bring it back to this weird medical condition that I have, but I was a little worried about that going into this because, it can be a problem sometimes, well, a lot of times lately. And sometimes talking for long periods of time, I start to get really lightheaded and I can get dizzy, and luckily none of that happened. I was a little lightheaded at times, but it didn't bother the flow of the podcast or anything, luckily. And it wasn't until we actually stopped recording that I had to put like an ice pack on my head and just kind of, I was fighting off, my body was trying to get dizzy, but luckily it passed and everything was okay. So not to always bring it back to that, like I said, but just it is a reality of it, and I feel like I need to address it sometimes, and that's partly why I wanted to do this podcast. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this first episode. It turned out great, and I couldn't be happier with it, and so be sure to check out the links that I post. And with that being said, here's my first guest, Matt Scraper. Side, I was on this side.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I made it to where it was on. We were equal on both sides. So, but yeah, all right. I guess we were starting. I guess I should intro it. This is the Less is More podcast. I'm your host, Chris Ray, and I'm here with my very first guest, Mr. Matt Scraper, not Matt Scrapper. And Matt only has one T, so you're not making it easy for anybody.
yeah, try to make it difficult, but it's good to get the Scrapper.
I imagine it. You get confused a lot, or people will say it the wrong way all the time.
Everybody's always say, "Hey, Scrapper, Scrapper this, Scrapper that."
People mispronounce, or not pronounce, but misspell my last name, R-A-Y.
Yeah, the easy one.
Just the other day, somebody said R-E-Y, and then they'll say R-A-E. W-R-A-Y. It's like everything. I'm like, no, you just do the obvious one. Yeah. But every time I spell it, or they'll think I say Gray.
Oh, Gray.
So Chris Gray.
Chris Gray. Oh, yeah.
So I get all those all the time. But
you say the 50 Shades of Gray.
Yeah,
be like that guy from there.
Right.
His last name is Gray.
I'm like, it's just like a ray of sunshine.
Yeah.
That's what my friend always says.
That's funny.
But yeah, I heard you on David Camden's podcast. Talk of the Town, which is a great name, by the way, for a podcast. Yeah. So if you're listening to this one, go check that one out. But I was trying to figure out, like, when you start a podcast, it's always difficult to. I'm like, how do I want to start it?
Mm-hmm.
I had some ideas. Of course, technically, I did the one with my daughter. That was kind of the intro to it, to see how it all worked, to make sure the mics and everything worked. And because it's still going.
Yeah, this is always the choppy, to find out how the flow once you do
it. Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to go through that process whenever somebody's actually here. So
yeah, definitely. I always like to start out in the beginning and be part of like the beginning one, so that way you see the growth of it throughout the time. It's kind of like when I with my stuff, I started out, I see how horrible it was and see that process, and you see where you're at now. You're like, oh, I'm not saying this is going horrible, but you learn.
I was going to ask you too about that process. Like, what was because you've had a lot of, how many viral videos have you had? Or what makes a viral video? Is it how many views technically? Like,
well, at the beginning, I thought I was always told that, like, because it was in the in the thousands, and I remember the first one I had, whenever it hit, it was like I think when it hit 7,000, I lost my mind, thought it was cool, and then my goal was to get to 100,000, and I was like, I knew at 100,000, I was like, oh, it's viral, and then even in the tens and 15,000s, like with views, people were like, oh, you're going viral, and then it went from 100,000, and then 500,000, and then when it hit the millions, I was like, man, it was crazy, and I've had a handful of them hit.
How fast does it go? Or like well, I guess they're probably all different, but like the first one, how fast did it hit 1 million?
It didn't. In the beginning, it did pretty good. Like it was around the 100,000s, and then I had one of the videos go. It hit. It was that Baker Mayfield one, that Throw It Like Mayfield, and it was that one that kind of kickstarted the other ones, and then that one started going viral, and that, I think it was before around that time frame, and then out of nowhere, I was at work one day and my phone just kept going off, and I had to turn off my notifications because I was like, what's going on? Because my phone kept going off, and then I later on when I took lunch, I looked at it, and it were so many. I never imagined in my life seeing, but there were so many notifications, and I was like, what is this? And it was friend requests, and it was and I was like, man, it's that Baker Mayfield one, and I looked at it, and it was that everybody went to high school with that guy, one, and it started shooting up there, and then I just saw it like throughout, like I'd look at it, refresh it, and then just the views would go up, and the next thing you know, it was at 1 million, and next thing you know, it was at 2 million, and and it was just shooting up there so fast, and it wasn't. In the beginning, it didn't start out like that. It took it was at least a few months, and then finally it started kicking off, and then the other ones started picking up, and then after that point, anything I'd post would be up there in the millions, like so easy. And I was like,
you just posted to Facebook, right?
Yeah, Facebook.
Those weren't on not Instagram,
YouTube.
YouTube.
Right? No, I just had them on Facebook because I knew everybody and their dog has a Facebook. So in my mind, I was like, that's where everybody's gonna see them. But if I was smart at that time, I would have been like, hey, I can actually get something more out of YouTube,
if you link it or whatever. Yeah, I wasn't sure how that worked because I know like you can make money off of YouTube videos. Yes. I didn't know if it was on Facebook.
Somewhat, but it takes more. You have to spend more money in that way, and then the way they have some of the stuff set up. And I learned through Facebook, if you spend some of the money you spend on it, doesn't necessarily go to followers and friends and different things. It's more. From what I've heard and from the studying I've done, and some of the people who actually do it, they said that they actually have people who are paid to have different accounts, and basically they give you views and friends and likes, and then when people see that, they're like, oh, I gotta watch it, and so you're basically paying for bots, kind of that thing, kind of like Twitter. I guess Twitter is one of those things. I don't mess with Twitter, but I hear that's a lot of it. You see like a lot of fake accounts on there from celebrities.
I had a Twitter for a little while, and I couldn't get people to follow me. I didn't know how to do it. I'm like, I would use some hashtags, but it didn't work. And so on Instagram, that's kind of my favorite.
Yeah, see, in Instagram, I feel like there's a handful of times I do that, but it's like I forget about the other social networks because I see some of these people I follow, or I talk to some of these ones who's had success with it, and they're like, you have to basically be on the grind and like put something on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, I guess another one too. Reddit is another one that people said it can do.
Really?
And then like Twitter, and like you just have to be on it. And I was like, I don't have time for that.
Snapchat, I tried. I didn't like it either. Yeah. That was kind of the same thing. I couldn't get anybody. No one knew who I was on there.
Yeah.
And on Facebook, you can at least see like people you may know, or
and they can look you up and find out a little bit about you before they add you.
You can look at your friends,
or
whatever. But on Snapchat, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So
that's why I focus more on Facebook, because that was the one that they said like that. They said that I think it was like over 50% of people in the world, when as soon as they wake up, the first thing they check is their Facebook. Like that's the very first thing, and so they have those time frames to post because they know that like the first thing. Because I'll notice like sometimes whenever because I'm busy with a lot of stuff, especially with work, full time job and everything. But like sometimes I'll post at night. And I hate doing it, but then sometimes I'll post at like 10, 11 o'clock, and it will do fairly well. But then I start I'll wake up and I'll check it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't do that well, or it's doing fairly okay. And then I'll go to sleep, and then when I wake up in the morning, my alarm goes off. I'll see all kinds of notifications that people, when they wake up, it's going crazy. I'm like, dang. So I was like, maybe I should start saving them for the morning and do the early morning.
Some posts they say are better in the evening because people like, after they've eaten dinner, they're just kind of sitting around, they're looking at it. Yeah. Maybe it's just like a photograph or something, but if it's a video or... I was wondering that about a podcast, because I listen to podcasts when I'm at work.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I wonder if it's better to post it in the morning.
So
people are going to work, or when they get to work and they see it. So I was going to research that. And it seems like, I would think that if you posted it like at 10 o'clock at night, people aren't like, well, I don't want to listen to it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe, if you posted it at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that, then maybe more people would listen to it. But
I think a podcast is brave to try to do, because
it's scary to do. It's like, even just like right now we're just talking, but it's like I'm sort of, or you have to kind of acknowledge the fact that you hope a bunch of people are listening to it. It could just be like nobody hears it, but you hope a lot of people hear it. So
I just don't think anybody like really listen to me that much, because whenever I talk, sometimes I'm like, are they actually listening to me? Or like, it's like, do you have to keep being funny the whole time, or do you have to like be more serious?
Well, I think you do if it's like a radio show, or if it was a talk show, and you only have like a late night talk show. Like, okay, you got 5 minutes for the world to see who you are. And you're like, okay, I got to give them everything I can in this 5 seconds. And they throw you questions that lead into a joke, and it's all planned. And it's like that, I feel like, served its purpose for a long time. And I mean, that was just kind of the way that you get to know people. But I think podcasting just kind of changed the game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because you get that a lot of time, because there's some people out there, what's that, Joe Rogan, he talks for like 3 hours, and he'll have a guest.
He's like the gold standard. And I'm like, I don't want people to be like, oh, who this guy, he's another guy starting a podcast. It's like, I feel like so many people have one now, but that's good though. I kind of look at it like starting a band or something, but or it's almost like a solo act. You have people come in, and it's almost like you are jamming with other musicians or something, because I grew up playing in bands, but kind of quit playing with other people for a long time, just because so many people, like, they wouldn't show up for practice.
Yes, that's what got me out of the whole band scene.
I got so tired of that. I would play with people. One of the last bands I tried to play with, it was in Tulsa, and so we would schedule a practice like a week in advance. And so I'm like, okay, everything's fine that day. I don't get any texts saying it's canceled. I load my drums, which that takes a little while. I load my drums. I have a family. I'm leaving them for the evening or whatever, and I'm driving, and I'm halfway there, and I get a text saying that either practice is canceled or the lead guitar player is not going to be there.
You gotta have the lead guitar.
Okay, so what are we going to do? It's like, well, we're just going to talk about some stuff. I don't want to just talk. We'll do that over the phone.
Yeah, you could do that.
So I would, that happened enough times, or I would get there. This is the worst. I would actually get there, set up my drums, and we're waiting, and then we get a call that the lead guitar player is not going to be there.
Yeah, so you got to reload everything.
So then I got to load it all back. I'm like, oh man. So after a few of those, I'm like, I'm not driving up there anymore. It's like, we had several band practices. We were supposed to play some show in Nashville. It was like this big deal, which sounds better than it is. Like, if you tell people, like, we got a show in Nashville. Like, what? That's crazy. But it's like it was some crappy, like, pay to play type of thing. And I didn't know that at first. And then, so I'm like, okay, so what kind of show is this? And like, well, we pay, I can't remember. It was a lot. It was like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
We pay this company, and we play a few songs, and then they will like critique it and stuff. Like, what? That sounds horrible. I thought we were playing a show in front of a crowd at a venue.
Yeah. Because even if you don't get paid, sometimes it's still worth it to have people see your stuff.
Well, most of the shows that I ever played, I didn't get paid. I got paid in like beer or food or something, which at the time was fine, because a lot of times if I did get paid, it covered my bill. Like if I played at a bar. Like, I used to live in Ohio, and a band that I played with there, we would play somewhere, and I don't know, say I made like $40. Oh, yeah. Well, my bar tab was $40. So I'm like, so we basically got paid in beer. I'm like, we just made it a little more complicated by you giving me this cash and then I giving it back to you. Like,
you get to hold it in your hand for a little bit, held that success. I got the money and get right
I got
back.
money. Look at this. I got paid.
Here it is, right back to you.
So that was the last time I was really in a band that played, but that was over 10 years ago now. So I spent a lot of time trying to find people around here, and sort of not too hard. Like, at first I was just, I was going to school, and I wasn't, trying that hard to do it. But once I decided I wanted to, I was driving back. That's why I made the commitment to drive to Tulsa. 'Cause I was like, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give it a go. Like, let's do it. And then it just kind of came back to bite me. So I kind of quit trying to do that. But recently was going to play with some people, Doc Fell.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Which I want to get into that later too, the video.
Oh, yeah, the video. Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Well, we can talk about it now because I was going to talk about like challenges with collaborating with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is, I guess, is kind of what we're talking about now, like flaky band musicians and people who don't. That's the other thing. A band that I was in, the guitar player didn't want to practice. Mm-hmm. It's not that he couldn't get there; he just didn't think he needed to.
Oh yeah, they're so good.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like the biggest bands in the world practice.
Oh yeah, you gotta have that.
You think U2, they're just like, we've got this, you guys. We're the biggest band in the world. They're gonna get together and they're gonna play, songs that they wrote in the '80s. They're gonna rehearse them, every now and then before they go on a tour. But it's not even that. It's just that band practice is fun. Like, I liked doing it, and so he would just be like, well, I don't need to practice. So we're supposed to play 24 songs, like 2 sets of 12. Mm-hmm. And we played 1 set of 12 and it went really well, only on 3 practices. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll do a lot of practicing at home because I have an electronic drum set too, so I can put headphones on. Yeah. And like, I can actually make it sound like I'm in the mix. It's pretty cool. So I was like, well, I'll just practice these 12 songs by myself. And if we only get together 3 times, then I've played these songs 20 times, and so we'll get to it. But the second time we were supposed to get together, we never could. Yeah. He never showed up, so the next show we played those same 12 songs. Yeah. Like, okay. Yeah. So all that time, my family, they went to Stillwell one day. They went to like some petting zoo. It was when my daughter was 2 or 3. So like going to like a farm or petting zoo, it's a huge deal.
Yeah, definitely.
And I wanted to go, and I was like, I can't. I've got to practice these songs. Yeah. And then we don't even end up playing them. So that was pretty frustrating. Yeah. But I had been talking to John Fell about playing, and then I had some issues with my ear, the whole Meniere's disease thing. So kind of put that on the back burner. Not saying we won't ever do it, but because it kind of goes in waves, and I'm hoping that once the wave kind of dies down, I can play. Because just when I started finding people to play with, like I was talking back and forth with him, and I was super excited. I was like, oh, because I know he's not a flaky musician. I mean, he's doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So I was like, well, this will be something really fun. And, there's new places to play, and this whole thing happened. But what was it like with... you were in one of his videos. Yeah. You played a radio.
Yeah, the DJ. What's that? Buck Nasty. It was the guy that does a lot of videos with him. John Baker. I've done a little bit stuff with him here and there, and I've followed his stuff. And he called me up and he was like, "Hey, Doc Phil, we're doing this video, and I think you'd be perfect for this. For this character." And I was kind of like, and automatically, I think it's whenever other people like want me, they have this anticipation for me to be a certain way, because I've always I think back in the day when I used to work with people, I still feel like I'm learning a lot, but then I just didn't have a gimmick, I didn't have an identity, I still feel like I don't 100%, but and I was just kind of impressionable. I was, and I would just kind of be like, okay, just tell me what to do, and I'll just do it, and I'll be that, right. But now I think when people, with all, these years I've been doing all this stuff, most of the time people are like, just go in and do you, just be you, just do whatever. I've been in some films with that some of these people that I know, and they're like, hey, we want you to be this character, we have this idea, you're going to be this character, okay, you got a script, you got something. They're like, no, you're just going to do everything yourself, you just kind of do it, you do your thing. And it's kind of like, and it's intimidating, and it's, and I feel like honored, because I'm like, they trust me enough, and then I get in there and I kill it, not to try to, sound like I got a big head or anything, but I kill it. But then I'm like, that's a lot of pressure for somebody, because and I'm like, well, tell me about it. And they're like, oh, this is your character, this is what that. And that's basically kind of what he did there. He's like, hey, I know you got this, get in there and do your thing. And I'm like, and then I started, and I think the other thing aside from that, it's like, okay, I got an idea what I'm going to do, just jump in there. And then I sat there, and then it's like I do things a certain way because I've always been a one-man show, you know, so I'm just like, I could do it this way, I do it that way, I do it this way. And with him filming and doing things his professional way, I'm just like, and then I start getting frustrated because I'm like, oh no, I got this, you know, I got to do this, and I'm like, and then it starts.
It would be difficult if you don't have like a script, or even like bullet points. Or
exactly.
Like, it's not completely all written out, but at least you've seen other DJs. If they say like maybe go to the, you know, like the early morning DJ, like, hey, and with all the wacky sound effects.
And that's kind of what he was talking about too. He was like, yeah, we're going to have all this crazy, it's just going to be that ridiculous one. And I think the one I kept tying back into was on Family Guy when Stewie and Brian did the Dingo and the Baby or whatever. And I kept thinking about that. It's like, how ridiculous that was. I love that.
He actually plays the scene from Philadelphia. Real sad, and all of a sudden they're like, just completely brings the show.
And I think that actually came on, like I was stressing about, because when he messaged me and he was talking about it, he's like, hey, I got this perfect spot for you, you know, he's like, can you know, we set up the date for it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and he's just like, you know, just one of those crazy ridiculous ones. And I remember sitting there one night, and I was just, you know, the TV's always, you know, usually when I write, the TV's on in the background, and I remember it was on, I turned around and that episode was on, I was like, holy crap, you know, I was like, this is, you know, and I started like watching it, and I started thinking about
it. I forgot about that.
And then it was just crazy because like 9 times out of 10 when I plan anything, and that's kind of how it comes to whenever I write something, I'll get an idea of, you know, like a topic, and then I'm like, okay, I'll do it this way. And then even when it's just me, you know, and then I have it set up on the tripod, and I'm about to go, everything I thought of kind of just clears out, and I'm just like, and then I basically try to become that person and what I could do and pop up. And so and that's kind of how it was with him behind me. He's like, oh, just do this, and you know. And then it was kind of funny because I was sitting there, I was doing some parts, and I could hear him laughing in the background. You know, he's like, just keep going. I'm like, okay, so that's a good sign that it was good, you know. And I kept getting frustrated because we were on a time limit too, so I was getting frustrated, and he's, you know, being all professional doing his thing. So I'm just like, oh man, I was like, I'm messing up, and we got this time frame, and I keep on messing up, you know. And I was like, I just don't want to get mad.
Stand-up comedian. It's like if they go out there and they say a joke and they get a laugh. It's like, whoa. It's like, but if it's the opposite of that, it's 10 times worse.
That's like the worst thing too, because I've been there with that, and it's not like with. I did a couple of house parties. I had a couple of friends who had me way back when, and you know, they were a big fan of my comedy side of everything, and I got this little gig set up, and I remember it's like this little party, and they were like, yeah, there's going to be like maybe like 20, 30 people, and I was like, that's still a pretty good amount, you know, for my you know, first time.
There's a lot of like mainstream comics that'll perform to less than that sometimes, depending on where it is.
Yeah, definitely. And that was like, and then I remember they did something and they put it out, and I think this was even before MySpace. I think they were still doing like the whole flyers, like they were putting, and they were like professional comedians and a special comedian or something like that, and a free beer, and they had like 2 kegs. I remember this guy had all this money.
Free beer, that's a guaranteed way to get people to your show.
People were like, people are here to see you. Well, I didn't know about their free beer, you know. Like, oh my gosh, you know. And I remember whenever everybody started going, I could hear, because we were in this other room, and I could hear, you know, people, and I'm sitting there listening, and they're like, yeah, there's a handful of people, and I started listening to all the talking, like, handful of people, you know. And I remember I looked out in the living room, because we were in this like little bedroom, and I peeked out in the living room, and it was packed. It was way more than anyone. And there was like a stairwell that people were up, and I'm like, what is happening? And I was like, I've never done that. And they're like, dude, they're here to see you. And really, the free beer, I'm sure. But I remember I get out there, and there's this little area that they had for me, and I walked out there, and no one knew who I was except for the handful of friends that knew some of my comedy. I walked out there, and I remember just everybody just stopped, and it was silent. And I'm just like, and it was like I had this like old PA system that somebody had that they used that was like broken. The mic was smashed in from a show that they used for their band stuff. I stood there and I had the mic in my face. I was like, how's everybody doing? And people were like, woo, yeah. And I was like, yeah. I was like, so how many people here have a penis? And some people were like, yeah, you know, because they were drinking, and so many people were like, and I'm like, and then when I got that reaction, I was like, oh no. And I was like, I don't know what to say. So then I just set the mood from there. And I was just, and a handful of them did pretty good. And then a handful of them were just like, people were, and then I started noticing through the back, there's like, it was a wave of people like started their own conversations, and it started, and, you know, and then by that time it got, and then finally it felt like it was like there were still a few people listening to me, and there's some of them who were into it, and there's like the people, I'm sure they were smoking something, that they were just cracking up, and then you could hear the music in the background start, and then it just kind of faded me out, and I was just like kind of just faded away, kind of like that with that Homer Simpson in the bushes, that just kind of faded out, and I was just like, dang, you know, and then that's right there set the tone, because I was like, maybe stand-up's not my thing, maybe I'm not that good, but it was just like, I don't think I was ready. I think
that was the first one too.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people's first ever stand-up performance is pretty bad.
Yeah, and it being at a house of all places too, I was just like, I should have like tried to get something set up, something better.
Well, if you go to a comedy club, those people are ready to laugh, and if you do it when people aren't expecting it, they're kind of like, what is this?
Yeah,
what is it?
I don't know talking about,
Yeah, but when they go to a comedy club and they sit down and they're ready for someone to come out.
Yeah.
So
it took me a while to try to get because I didn't stop writing and I continued from then to keep doing it. But I was trying to find another way to get like my comedy out there and try to do different things. And going from writing nothing but horror to getting into the comedy side of things, it was kind of like I was like and then it's like finding relatable things. And then then I was like, there's a difference between getting up there and somebody kind of like we were talking about this podcast. If you get up there, it's like what makes you think that people are really going to listen to you, or what can you do to get people to listen? And they're like, well, if you have past credit, but I was like, but what do you do when you're new to it, and you pop up? No one really knows who you are because you can go to no of those places and no one know who exactly you are.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to do something shocking so people will talk about it?
Exactly.
But it may not be good, but it's like there's a fine line between doing something like that and it just going horribly wrong, or like something that people appreciate. That's funny though, because my dad used to always say that he thought that would be the best name for a band is Free Beer.
Free Beer, yeah.
Because he would put that on a marquee outside.
Yeah, everybody can show up. Yeah.
Of course, I imagine though, once they realize that it's the band's name, they're gonna be pretty pissed off.
And then
they're not gonna like you.
And then what the Bare Naked Ladies did, I think they did something like that.
Yeah,
I think that's how they got their name.
I would imagine.
Yeah, because when people would see it, they'd show up and see these guys, and I was like, that kind of stuff's funny to me. Like when they would do things like that. But like you said, you're pissing people off.
Live nude girls.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of the same concept.
Yeah, but you're doing like really good on the perv guy side. They actually kind of like your music, and it's like
and you get a few that are like, they got me. I'll listen to it.
Yeah, that's your key audience. They like you a lot. Some dude's listening to it before he goes.
Where do you find inspiration at? Do you have like a certain type of thing that you like to do, like go hiking or anything like that you just it tends to bring out ideas, or do they just kind of come to you and
it kind of
when you shouldn't be thinking about it?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. It's more of the thing where I go and I do I kind of just do my own. I'm in my head a lot. I do a lot of thinking in my head. I'm always nonstop. I've tried to take my with what people when I was younger would talk about, like disorder with like ADD and anxiety and all that stuff. Yeah. And I would take that and I would kind of try to turn it positive, try to find a sunny side of it. Right. And, with having my mind run 90 to nothing, and as you can tell, that's what a lot of people in David's podcast, they're like, man, you slow down, breathe, and I'm like, and that's always been me. And when I talk to people are like, and I get people all the time, slow down, I'm just like, well, while I'm talking, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And, and I just kind of, I'm always thinking about something, some things like when people say certain things, I'm just like, that's kind of funny, and I'll turn it into something,
I am with my notes in my phone.
Yes.
I always tell my wife, I'm like, I'm ever like killed in a car crash or something, you're going through my phone, just know that like my notes, I'm not crazy. It's just like random thoughts will come to me, and I'll just type in like, I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but it'll just be like random words. And I'm like, not to even think like those morbid thoughts, but I'm just like, if anyone ever found my phone, they're like, whose phone is this?
That's what I'm scared of, like some of the scenes I have, because I'll have different sections in my notes, and I'll have like a scene I think will be kind of cool, and then I'll type up, killer, the killer things, that I want the killer to do, and then it's like all these morbid things. I'm just like, I hope no one finds that, and I think of that all the time. But then sometimes I'll go for like at night. Sometimes I'll go for like little walks or something. Kind of doing that cliche thing, kind of getting out and about and get it cleared out from everything. Just kind of pop something up. Or if like for instance that one of the most recent videos I did with the mom at the basketball game. I was around basketball games. Growing up seeing that. And I can take a combination of my mom with other moms I see with kind of a character mom, some of the other things, and I'll see that kind of stuff. And like for instance, like the pickle thing that I had that was in there, the girl kept talking about pickles, and I just kind of turned it into what was on the video, and I typed it up as like mom eating pickle, nasty, or something like that, and then later on I'll be like and then
in parentheses,
seductive, and then I'll like sometimes I'll do that, and then when I'm like all over the place, which happens more often than not, I'll see it and then I'll come back to something and I'll be like, what the heck, like what was that? And sometimes my thinking, like when I wake up and at 4 whenever I'm like freaking out, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this and I got bills and I got this and I got that gonna go, and one day we're all gonna die, and I'm freaking out. But then I'm like, okay, I gotta focus,
Mm-hmm.
And then I start thinking, and I start playing an idea in my head, or like a film or something that I wrote, and I'll start playing, and I'll start thinking ideas and typing it, and the next morning, and that calms me and chills me out, and then I'll go to sleep, and I'll wake up and I'll go back to my notes. I'm like, what the heck? Like, it was something I can't remember the most recent one. It's funny, it was stupid, but I just lost it.
I'll try to think. I'll remember that in the morning. And I wake up and I'm like, I've got nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't remember any of that, and I know it was good. So I usually will try it. But a lot of mine, it's not so much video related because I don't do that many. I have video ideas that I think would be funny, but mine are mostly like things I want to build.
Oh yeah.
So like it's just ideas. So it's mostly just like most of the stuff I have up here.
Yeah.
All my little miniatures and stuff.
I've seen a lot of that on Instagram. And I was wondering, I was like, what?
Yeah, that's not all of them. I've got the little